The first encounter. The galaxy had long been a place of relative peace, with only a few species ever coming into conflict. The Urmia, a species renowned for their wisdom and diplomatic prowess, had maintained order among the stars for centuries. They believed in harmony and the coexistence of all sentient beings. However, the tranquility of the galaxy was about to be shattered when the aggressive and uncompromising Kuk-Kamsu encountered humanity for the first time. The Kuk-Kamsu were a fearsome race, towering over most other species with their six-limbed, serpentine bodies. They were known for their brutal methods and had a reputation for annihilating any civilization that stood in their way. When they discovered a small human settlement on a planet marked for their own exploitation, they saw it as just another obstacle to be crushed. The humans had established the settlement only a few years prior, unaware that they were encroaching on Kuk-Kamsu territory. The settlers were peaceful, focused on exploring the new world and expanding their understanding of the universe. They had no idea what was coming for them. The Kuk-Kamsu's armed recon team descended upon the human settlement without warning. Their leader, a massive, heavily armored warrior, took point. With a flick of his wrist, he ignited the flamethrower mounted on his forearm and began to torch the human structures. The flames roared to life, consuming the wooden buildings in an instant. The humans, caught completely off guard, scrambled to escape the inferno. They had never seen anything like the Kuk-Kamsu before, these massive, snake-like creatures with armor that seemed impervious to any weapon they had. Panic spread quickly as the settlers tried to flee, but the Kuk-Kamsu were relentless. The recon leader spotted a vehicle attempting to escape the settlement. With a precise shot from his laser, he disabled the vehicle, leaving its occupants stranded. The Kuk-Kamsu approached the vehicle, ready to finish off the humans inside. But what he found was not what he expected. Inside the vehicle was a human family, a man, a woman, and 2 children. They looked up at the Kuk-Kamsu with fear in their eyes, but there was something else there too: defiance. The man stepped out of the vehicle, placing himself between the alien and his family. The Kuk-Kamsu hesitated. This was not the reaction he had anticipated. The humans were supposed to be weak, insignificant. Yet here was one, standing up to him, protecting his family even in the face of certain death. The Kuk-Kamsu had seen many species break under the weight of their power, but this human did not. The recon leader raised his weapon, preparing to incinerate the human. But before he could fire, something unexpected happened. The man reached into the vehicle and pulled out a small, metallic object. He pointed it at the Kuk-Kamsu, and, with a click, the object emitted a blinding flash of light. The Kuk-Kamsu recoiled, momentarily disoriented. The human had used some kind of weapon, primitive by Kuk-Kamsu standards, but effective nonetheless. The leader shook off the effects of the flash and prepared to attack again, but the human was already moving. He grabbed his family and led them into the nearby forest, disappearing into the dense foliage. The Kuk-Kamsu were furious. They had underestimated the humans, and now some had escaped. The recon leader ordered his team to pursue them, but the forest was thick and unfamiliar. The humans knew the terrain, and they used it to their advantage. The Kuk-Kamsu, on the other hand, were ill-equipped for such an environment. As the recon team searched for the humans, the leader couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about this species. The humans had fought back, not with brute force, but with cunning and resourcefulness. The leader realized that this would not be as easy as they had initially thought. The Kuk-Kamsu were used to overwhelming their enemies with sheer power, but the humans were proving to be a more formidable opponent. They were resilient, adaptive, and most importantly, they were not afraid. The recon leader began to see the humans not as prey, but as a challenge that the Kuk-Kamsu would have to rise to meet. The encounter with the human family marked the beginning of a new chapter in the Kuk-Kamsu's history. They would no longer see humanity as a simple obstacle, but as a potential threat. The recon leader knew that they would have to change their tactics if they were to overcome this new adversary. And so, the hunt for the humans continued. But this time, the Kuk-Kamsu were not just hunting for sport, they were hunting for survival. The human retaliation, the Kuk-Kamsu's aggression, had not gone unnoticed. While the initial attack on the small human settlement was swift and brutal, word of it spread quickly across the other human colonies. The humans, who had been quietly expanding their reach in the galaxy, were not prepared to let such an atrocity go unchallenged. They had faced adversity before, but this time it was different. They were not fighting among themselves. They were facing an external threat, one that could unite them in a way nothing else had. In a remote command center on Earth, the leaders of humanity's fledgling space fleet gathered. They had received the distress signal from the attacked settlement and had already begun mobilizing their forces. The room buzzed with urgency as commanders discussed tactics, reviewed intelligence, and formulated a response. There was a palpable sense of determination in the air. This was not just about defending a colony, it was about defending humanity's place in the galaxy. Admiral Hayes, a seasoned veteran of Earth's military, stood at the head of the table. He was a man known for his strategic mind and his ability to stay calm under pressure. As the other commanders debated, he listened intently, his mind already working on a plan. "We need to hit them where it hurts," one of the commanders said, slamming his fist on the table. "They think they can just walk all over us. We need to show them what we're made of." "Agreed," Hayes said, his voice steady. "But we need to be smart about this. The Kuk-Kamsu are powerful, and they have experience we don't. We can't afford to make any mistakes." The room fell silent as the commanders waited for Hayes to continue. He walked over to a large holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy, with the location of the attacked settlement highlighted. Hayes zoomed out to show the surrounding systems, many of which contained other human colonies. "The Kuk-Kamsu are likely to hit us again," Hayes said. "They underestimated us once, but they won't make that mistake twice. We need to be ready for their next move. Our best chance is to take the fight to them, but we can't just rush in blindly. We need to draw them into a fight on our terms." Hayes outlined his plan. The human fleet would split into two groups. The first group, led by Hayes himself, would take a direct route toward the Kuk-Kamsu's territory, making their presence known. This would serve as a diversion, drawing the Kuk-Kamsu's attention away from the real target. The second group, composed of the most advanced ships in the fleet, would take a more covert route, using the galaxy's natural phenomena, nebulae, asteroid fields, and gravitational anomalies, to mask their approach. Their mission would be to strike at the heart of the Kuk-Kamsu's military infrastructure, crippling their ability to wage war. The plan was risky, but it was the best chance humanity had. The commanders nodded in agreement, understanding the gravity of the situation. There was no turning back now. As the fleet prepared to depart, there was a sense of unity among the humans. They were fighting not just for themselves, but for the future of their species. The Kuk-Kamsu had made a grave mistake by attacking them, and now they would face the full might of humanity. The fleet launched from Earth, with Admiral Hayes leading the charge. The vast expanse of space stretched out before them, filled with unknown dangers. But the humans were undeterred. They had faced the unknown before, and they had always emerged stronger. As the fleet moved through the void, Hayes couldn't help but think about the settlers who had been attacked. They were pioneers, explorers who had ventured into the stars with the hope of building a better future. Their courage in the face of adversity had inspired Hayes and his commanders, and now it was up to them to ensure that their sacrifice was not in vain. The first encounter with the Kuk-Kamsu had been a brutal reminder of the dangers that lurked in the galaxy, but it had also awakened something in the humans, a fierce determination to protect their own and to prove that they were not to be underestimated. As the fleet approached the Kuk-Kamsu's territory, the tension grew. The humans knew that they were walking into the lion's den, but they were ready, they had a plan, and they had the will to see it through. The Kuk-Kamsu closed in, their weapons trained on Sarah. But just as they were about to strike, a blinding flash of light filled the sky. The human reinforcements had arrived. Admiral Hayes' fleet descended on the Kuk Kamsu with overwhelming force, driving them back and turning the tide of battle. Sarah watched in awe as the Kuk Kamsu ships were destroyed one by one. The humans had won the day. As the last of the Kuk Kamsu ships retreated, Sarah collapsed to the ground, exhausted but relieved. They had done it. They had defended New Horizon. But as she looked around at the devastation, Sarah knew that the war was far from over. The Kuk Kamsu would be back, and they would be even more determined to destroy humanity. But Sarah was ready. She had seen what humanity was capable of, and she knew that they would not go down without a fight. The war escalates. The victory at New Horizon was a crucial turning point in the war, but it came at a high cost. The colony was left in ruins, and countless lives were lost. As the survivors began to rebuild, the reality of the ongoing conflict weighed heavily on everyone. The Kuk Kamsu had been beaten back, but they were far from defeated. The war was escalating, and the entire galaxy could feel the tension rising. Admiral Hayes knew that humanity needed to strike while the iron was hot. The Kuk Kamsu were regrouping, and if they were allowed to recover, they would return with even greater force. Hayes convened with his top military advisors, strategists, and scientists to plan their next move. The meeting was held aboard the USS Resolute, a massive warship and the current flagship of the human fleet. "Admiral, we can't afford to be on the defensive any longer," said General Thompson, one of Hayes' most trusted advisors. He was a seasoned soldier, with scars that spoke of a lifetime of battles. "The Kuk Kamsu won't stop until they've wiped us out. We need to take the fight to them." Hayes nodded in agreement. "You're right, General. We need to hit them where it hurts. But we can't just launch a frontal assault. The Kuk Kamsu are too powerful for that. We need a plan that will catch them off guard." Dr. Elena Vargas, the head of the USS Resolute's research division, spoke up next. "Admiral, we've been analyzing Kuk Kamsu technology, and we've made some breakthroughs. Their ships are powered by a type of energy source we've never seen before, something we believe is tied to their homeworld. If we can find a way to disrupt it, we could cripple their entire fleet." The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications of Dr. Vargas' words. The Kuk Kamsu's power source was the key to their dominance in space combat. If humanity could find a way to neutralize it, they could turn the tide of the war. "Do we have any leads on where this energy source might be located?" Hayes asked. Dr. Vargas nodded. "We believe it's located deep within Kuk Kamsu territory, on a planet known as Zorath Prime. It's heavily fortified and surrounded by their most elite forces. Getting close enough to launch an attack will be incredibly dangerous." Hayes leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. The risks were enormous, but the potential reward was too great to ignore. "We need to assemble a strike team," he said finally. "A small, highly skilled unit that can infiltrate Zorath Prime and carry out the mission." "Admiral, I volunteer to lead the team," said Commander Jason Cole, one of Hayes' best officers. Cole was known for his bravery and tactical genius, and he had led countless successful missions against the Kuk Kamsu. "I know the risks, but I believe we can do this. We owe it to everyone who has fallen in this war." Hayes considered Cole's offer for a moment before nodding. "Very well, Commander. You'll lead the strike team. Dr. Vargas, I want you to work closely with Commander Cole to ensure he has everything he needs for this mission." "Understood, Admiral," Dr. Vargas replied. As the meeting continued, the details of the mission began to take shape. The strike team would consist of a mix of elite soldiers, engineers, and scientists. Their goal was to infiltrate Zorath Prime, locate the Kuk Kamsu energy source, and find a way to disrupt it. It was a mission with slim chances of success, but it was humanity's best hope. The transmission ended, and Sarah immediately turned to her team. "You heard the Admiral. Get everyone into position. We need to be ready for anything." The next few hours were a blur of activity as Sarah and her squad made final preparations. They checked and rechecked the defenses, distributed weapons, and briefed the colonists on what to do in case of an attack. The tension in the air was palpable, but there was also a sense of determination. The people of New Horizon were not going to give up their home without a fight. As night fell, the colony was bathed in an eerie silence. The usual sounds of life, children playing, farmers working in the fields, were absent. Instead, the only sounds were the distant hum of machinery and the occasional crackle of a radio. Sarah stood on the roof of the command center, her eyes scanning the darkened horizon. She knew the Cup Kamsu could attack at any moment, but there was no sign of them yet. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She had faced combat before, but this was different. This was her home, and the stakes were higher than ever. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the blare of alarms. Sarah's radio crackled to life as reports started flooding in. Incoming ships, multiple contacts on radar. Sarah grabbed her binoculars and focused on the horizon. In the distance, she could see the faint glimmer of lights, hundreds of them, heading straight for New Horizon. "All units, this is Lieutenant Quinn," she said into her radio, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Prepare for incoming. This is not a drill." The colony's defenses sprang to life as the Cup Kamsu ships drew closer. Anti-aircraft batteries swiveled into position, targeting systems locked onto the approaching enemy. Soldiers took up their positions, ready to repel the invaders. As the first wave of Cup Kamsu fighters swooped down on the colony, the night sky lit up with the glow of tracer fire and explosions. The humans fought with everything they had, determined to hold the line. But the Cup Kamsu were relentless. Their ships rained fire down on the colony, targeting the defenses with pinpoint accuracy. Buildings exploded, and the ground shook with the force of the bombardment. Sarah's heart raced as she directed her squad from the command center. They were holding their own for now, but the Cup Kamsu were pushing them to their limits. She could see the strain on her soldiers' faces as they fought to keep the enemy at bay. "Stay focused," Sarah shouted over the noise of battle. "We can't let them break through." But the Cup Kamsu were not just targeting the defenses, they were going after the civilians as well. Sarah watched in horror as one of the Cup Kamsu ships strafed a group of fleeing colonists, cutting them down in a hail of gunfire. "No," Sarah yelled, her heart breaking at the sight. She knew she had to do something. "Sergeant Davis, take command here," she ordered, handing over her radio. "I'm going to the front lines." Without waiting for a response, Sarah grabbed her rifle and sprinted out of the command center. She had to protect the colonists, no matter the cost. As she ran through the chaos, dodging explosions and gunfire, Sarah could see the terror on the faces of the colonists. They were defenseless against the Cup Kamsu, and many were being cut down as they tried to escape. "Over here," Sarah shouted, waving her arms to get their attention. "This way." She led the colonists to a nearby bunker, providing cover fire as they ran. The Cup Kamsu fighters targeted her, but she kept moving, determined to save as many lives as she could. When the last of the colonists had made it to safety, Sarah turned to face the enemy. She was outnumbered and outgunned, but she wasn't about to give up. She raised her rifle and fired at the approaching Cup Kamsu, her shots finding their mark. The Cup Kamsu ships focused their fire on Sarah, but she was too fast for them. She darted between cover, picking off the enemy one by one. She knew she couldn't hold them off forever, but she was determined to buy her people as much time as possible. As the battle raged on, Sarah's radio crackled to life again. "Lieutenant Quinn, this is Admiral Hayes. Reinforcements are en route. Hold the line a little longer." Sarah felt a surge of relief at the Admiral's words. They just had to hold out a little longer, and help would arrive. But the Cup Kamsu were not giving up. They launched a final, all-out assault, determined to crush the humans once and for all. Sarah could see their ships converging on her position, and she knew that this was it. She was the last line of defense. "Come on, you bastards," she shouted, firing her rifle with everything she had. "You want to fight? you've got one. The Kamsu had no idea what was coming. They had encountered many species in their time, but none like the humans. They had seen their share of resistance, but they had never faced an opponent so determined, so resourceful. As the human fleet entered Kamsu space, the trap was set. Admiral Hayes' group made their presence known, drawing the Kamsu forces out to meet them. The Kamsu, confident in their superior numbers and technology, moved to engage the human fleet head-on. But as they closed in, the second human group struck. They emerged from the shadows, launching a surprise attack on the Kamsu's command center. The Kamsu, caught off guard, scrambled to defend themselves, but it was too late. The human assault was swift and devastating, crippling the Kamsu's ability to coordinate their forces. The Kamsu's confusion gave the first human group the advantage they needed. They pressed the attack, forcing the Kamsu into a full retreat. The once mighty Kamsu fleet, now in disarray, was no match for the determined human forces. As the Kamsu retreated, Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the enemy flee. He knew that this was only the beginning. The Kamsu would not give up easily, and there would be more battles to come. But for now, humanity had won a crucial victory. The message was clear. Humanity was not to be trifled with. The Kamsu had learned that the hard way, and the rest of the galaxy would soon know it as well. The turning tide. The victory against the Kamsu was celebrated across the human colonies, but there was no time to rest. The Kamsu were a proud and powerful species, and the humans knew that they would retaliate with even greater force. Admiral Hayes and his commanders were already planning their next move, determined to keep the momentum on their side. Meanwhile, on one of the human colonies closest to the Kamsu territory, preparations were underway for the inevitable counterattack. This colony, known as New Horizon, had been a quiet agricultural world before the war. Now it was being transformed into a fortress, with defenses being built at a frantic pace. The colonists, who had once tended to crops, were now preparing to defend their homes. Among them was Lieutenant Sarah Quinn, a young officer who had grown up on New Horizon. She had joined the military to see the stars, but now the war had come to her doorstep. Sarah was in charge of a squad of soldiers tasked with preparing the colony's defenses. They worked tirelessly, knowing that the safety of their families depended on their efforts. As Sarah supervised the construction of a new anti-aircraft battery, she couldn't help but think about the Kamsu. She had seen the footage of the attack on the other colony, and it had shaken her. The Kamsu were unlike any enemy humanity had faced before, merciless and seemingly unstoppable. But Sarah knew that they could be beaten. The victory led by Admiral Hayes had proven that. "Lieutenant Quinn," a voice called out, snapping Sarah out of her thoughts. It was Sergeant Davis, her second-in-command. "We finished setting up the battery. We're ready for a test run." "Good work, Sergeant," Sarah replied, walking over to inspect the installation. The anti-aircraft battery was one of several being set up around the colony to protect against any aerial assaults. The Kamsu were known for their powerful air forces, and Sarah wanted to be ready for them. As the battery was powered up and the targeting systems came online, Sarah felt a sense of pride in her team. They had worked hard to get this far, and she was confident that they would be able to defend New Horizon when the time came. But as Sarah looked out at the horizon, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. The skies were clear now, but she knew that could change in an instant. The Kamsu were not the type to let a defeat go unanswered. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of an incoming transmission. Sarah hurried to the communications tent, where a group of technicians was already gathering around the console. "It's from Admiral Hayes," one of the technicians said as Sarah entered. "Put it through," Sarah ordered, standing at attention as the Admiral's face appeared on the screen. "Lieutenant Quinn, I need your team on high alert," Hayes said, getting straight to the point. "We've received intel that the Kamsu are mobilizing for a counterattack. New Horizon is a likely target. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Understood, sir. We'll be ready. I know you will, Hayes said. I'm sending reinforcements, but they may not arrive in time. You'll need to hold the line until then. We won't let you down, sir, Sarah promised. I have no doubt you will, Hayes replied with a nod. Hayes out. A few days later, a strike team was assembled and ready to depart. They'd boarded the USS Vanguard, a stealth ship designed for covert operations. The Vanguard was equipped with the latest in human technology, including advanced cloaking devices and powerful weaponry. But even with these advantages, the team knew they were heading into the lion's den. As the Vanguard left the safety of human-controlled space and entered Cup Kamsu territory, the tension among the crew was palpable. They were flying into the heart of enemy territory, and any mistake could mean disaster. But Commander Cole remained calm and focused. He had been in tough situations before, and he knew that panic would only lead to failure. All right, Team, Cole said, addressing his crew over the ship's intercom. We're deep in enemy space now. Stay sharp and stick to the plan. We're going to get in, complete the mission, and get out. No heroics. Just do your jobs, and we'll make it back home. The Vanguard approached Zorath Prime under the cover of darkness, its cloaking device rendering it nearly invisible. The planet loomed ahead, a massive world covered in dense forests and towering mountains. It was a beautiful place, but the team knew that it was also one of the most dangerous locations in the galaxy. Entering orbit now, said Lieutenant Parker, the ship's pilot. I'm picking up multiple Cup Kamsu patrols in the area, but they haven't detected us yet. Good, Cole replied. Take us down to the surface. We need to move quickly. The Vanguard descended through the atmosphere, weaving between mountain peaks and thick clouds to avoid detection. As they neared the surface, the team could see Cup Kamsu fortifications scattered across the landscape, massive gun emplacements, radar stations, and bunkers. It was clear that the Cup Kamsu were prepared for an attack, but they hadn't counted on a stealth infiltration. Touchdown in 3, 2, 1, Parker said as the ship gently landed in a hidden clearing. We're on the ground. Cole and his team disembarked from the Vanguard, their boots sinking into the soft earth. The air was thick with humidity, and the sounds of avian wildlife filled the night. But there was no time to admire the scenery. They had a mission to complete. Move out, Cole ordered, and the team began their trek through the dense forest, using handheld scanners to navigate and avoid Cup Kamsu patrols. The journey was slow and arduous, but the team remained focused. They knew that one wrong move could alert the enemy to their presence. As they neared their target, Dr. Vargas began analyzing the readings from her equipment. We're close, she whispered to Cole. The energy source should be just ahead. They emerged from the forest into a large clearing, and there it was, the Cup Kamsu energy source. It was housed in a massive, heavily guarded facility, surrounded by force fields and patrolled by Cup Kamsu soldiers. The facility hummed with power, and strange, glowing crystals protruded from the ground around it. This is it, Cole said, surveying the scene. Vargas, any ideas on how we can take this thing down? Dr. Vargas studied the facility for a moment before replying. We need to disrupt the crystal's energy flow. If we can do that, it should cause a chain reaction that will take down the entire facility. But we'll need to get inside to do it. Then that's what we'll do, Cole said. Team, prepare for infiltration. We'll hit them fast and hard. No mistakes. The team split into two groups, one to provide covering fire and the other to breach the facility. As they moved into position, the tension mounted. They were about to launch a direct assault on one of the most heavily fortified locations in the galaxy, and there was no room for error. On my mark, Cole whispered, his hand hovering over the detonator for their explosives. 3, 2, 1, mark. The explosives went off with a deafening roar, and the battle began. The covering team opened fire on the Cup Kamsu guards, drawing their attention and allowing the breaching team to slip inside the facility. Cole led the charge, his rifle blazing as he took down any Kuk Kamsu soldiers who crossed his path. The team moved quickly through the facility, heading for the main reactor chamber where the crystals were housed. The Kuk Kamsu fought fiercely to defend their energy source, but the human strike team was relentless. Finally, they reached the reactor chamber. The room was filled with the pulsating glow of the crystals, and the air crackled with energy. Dr. Vargas immediately went to work, setting up her equipment to disrupt the crystal's energy flow. "Cover me," she shouted as she began inputting commands into her device. Cole and the rest of the team formed a defensive perimeter, holding off the waves of Kuk Kamsu reinforcements that were pouring into the chamber. The fighting was intense, and the team was taking heavy fire, but they held their ground. Almost there, Vargas muttered as her device whirred and beeped. "Just a few more seconds." "Make it quick, Doc," Cole yelled over the din of battle. "We're running out of time." Finally, the device emitted a high-pitched tone, and the crystal's glow began to dim. The energy in the room started to fluctuate wildly, and the Kuk Kamsu soldiers looked around in panic as their power source began to destabilize. "It's done," Vargas shouted, grabbing her equipment. "We need to get out of here now." The team didn't need to be told twice. They fought their way back through the facility, the ground shaking beneath their feet as the energy source began to collapse. The entire structure was coming apart, and they had only moments to escape. As they burst out of the facility and into the open air, the entire complex behind them exploded in a blinding flash of light. Humanity's counterattack. The strike on Zorath Prime was a resounding success, sending shockwaves throughout the Kuk Kamsu Empire. With their energy source crippled, the Kuk Kamsu fleet was forced to retreat from several key sectors, giving humanity a much-needed respite. But the war was far from over, and Admiral Hayes knew that now was the time to press the advantage. Back on Earth, the United Human Federation was in full gear, mobilizing resources and preparing for a large-scale counteroffensive. The news of the successful mission on Zorath Prime had boosted morale across the galaxy, and more systems were rallying to humanity's cause. Allies that had been hesitant before were now offering their support, seeing humanity as a force to be reckoned with. Admiral Hayes stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, overseeing the final preparations for the next phase of their campaign. The war had entered a new stage, and it was time to take the fight directly to the Kuk Kamsu. "Admiral, the fleet is ready," reported Captain Reynolds, the Resolute's first officer. "Our forces are assembled and awaiting your orders." "Good," Hayes replied, his voice steady and resolute. "Signal all ships. We're moving out." The fleet, now bolstered by the addition of new warships and the support of Allied forces, began its journey toward the heart of Kuk Kamsu territory. The plan was ambitious: to strike at the Kuk Kamsu homeworld and force them to the negotiating table. It was a risky move, but one that could potentially end the war in humanity's favor. As the fleet traveled through space, Hayes called another meeting with his top advisors. The stakes had never been higher, and every decision had to be carefully weighed. "Admiral, our intelligence suggests that the Kuk Kamsu are regrouping at their homeworld, Zaltan," said General Thompson. "They're amassing what remains of their fleet there, likely in preparation for a last stand." "Then we need to hit them hard and fast," Hayes said. "We can't afford to let them rebuild their strength. But Zaltan is their most fortified world. We're going to need every advantage we can get." Dr. Vargas, who had played a crucial role in the success at Zorath Prime, spoke up. "Admiral, we've been analyzing the data from the Zorath Prime mission, and we've identified a potential weakness in their defenses. The Kuk Kamsu rely heavily on their planetary shields, but our research suggests that a concentrated assault on their shield generators could create a temporary opening for our forces to breach their defenses." "How temporary?" Hayes asked. "Minutes, maybe less," Vargas admitted, "but it might be all the time we need." Hayes nodded. "It's a risk, but it's one we'll have to take. General Thompson, I want our best units prepared for a ground assault. Once we breach the shields, we'll deploy our troops to take out the remaining defenses and secure the planet. Understood, Admiral, Thompson replied. The plan was set. The fleet would engage the Kamsu forces in orbit, while a specialized task force would land on Sultan and disable the planetary shield generators. It was a daring strategy, but one that could potentially turn the tide of the entire war. As the human fleet approached at Sultan, the scale of the Kamsu defenses became clear. The planet was surrounded by massive warships, orbital defense platforms, and a shimmering energy shield that protected the entire world from attack. It was a fortress, and breaking through would be no easy task. All ships, prepare for battle, Hayes ordered as the fleet moved into formation. Focus fire on their largest vessels. We need to draw their attention away from the shield generators. The battle began with a thunderous exchange of fire. The human fleet, though outnumbered, fought with the tenacity and determination that had come to define their species. The Kamsu ships were powerful, but they had not expected such a coordinated and aggressive assault. Captain Reynolds, deploy the ground forces, Hayes commanded as the battle raged on. We need to get them on the surface as soon as possible. The UAS Resolutes hangar bays opened, releasing dozens of dropships carrying elite soldiers, engineers, and combat vehicles. The task force descended toward Sultan, braving heavy anti-air fire as they made their way to the surface. Commander Cole, who had led the mission on Zorath Prime, was once again at the forefront. Stay focused, people, Cole said over the comms as his dropship dodged enemy fire. We're going to hit those shield generators and clear the way for the fleet. The dropships landed in a barren, rocky area on Sultan, just outside the range of the main Kamsu defenses. The task force quickly disembarked and began their advance toward the shield generators, which were located in a heavily fortified complex several kilometers away. As they moved through the desolate landscape, they encountered fierce resistance from Kamsu ground forces. The fighting was brutal, with both sides sustaining heavy casualties. But the human soldiers were relentless, pushing forward with the determination that had become their trademark. Generators are up ahead, Cole said, checking his scanner. Get ready to breach. The complex housing the shield generators was a massive structure, bristling with defensive turrets and surrounded by energy barriers. It was clear that the Kamsu would not give up this position without a fight. All units, prepare for assault, Cole ordered. Engineers, get those charges ready. We're going to blow our way in. The engineers quickly set up explosive charges on the energy barriers, and with a deafening blast, the barriers came down. The human soldiers surged forward, engaging the Kamsu defenders in close-quarters combat. The fighting was intense, but the humans had the element of surprise on their side. Vargas, we're in, Cole shouted over the comms. Get that device ready. We need to take these generators offline now. Dr. Vargas, who had accompanied the task force, quickly set to work on disabling the shield generators. The process was complex and required precise timing, but she remained focused, knowing that the entire mission depended on her success. As the battle raged around her, Vargas finally managed to input the last command into her device. The shield generators began to sputter and spark, their energy flow disrupted by the device's interference. It's done, Vargas yelled. The shields are going down. Above the planet, Admiral Hayes watched as a massive energy shield surrounding Sultan flickered and then collapsed. The opening was small, but it was enough. All ships, concentrate fire on the planet's surface, Hayes ordered. Target their main defensive installations. We're going to end this here and now. The human fleet unleashed a devastating barrage of firepower, targeting the Kamsu's key defenses on the planet. The concentrated assault overwhelmed the Kamsu forces, and one by one, their defenses crumbled. On the ground, the human task force continued to press forward, taking control of the shield generator complex and securing the surrounding area. The Kuk Kamsu defenders, realizing that their situation was hopeless, began to retreat. "Admiral, this is Cole," the commander said over the comms. "The complex is secure. We've taken out the generators and neutralized the remaining enemy forces." "Good work, Commander," Hayes replied. "Begin preparations for the next phase. We're going to force their hand." With the planet's defenses shattered, the Kuk Kamsu had no choice but to fall back to their last stronghold on Sultan, their central command center. It was here that the final battle would take place, a confrontation that would determine the fate of both humanity and the Kuk Kamsu Empire. As the human forces prepared for the final assault, the atmosphere was tense. The war had reached its climax, and everyone knew that the outcome of this battle would shape the future of the galaxy. "All units, this is Admiral Hayes," the Admiral's voice rang out over the comms. "We fought long and hard to get here, and now it's time to finish the job. Remember why we're here. Remember everyone we've lost. Let's make sure their sacrifice wasn't in vain." Hayes out. The human soldiers steeled themselves for the final push. The Kuk Kamsu had been a formidable enemy, but now, in their most desperate hour, they would face the full might of humanity's resolve. The stage was set for the final confrontation, a battle that would echo throughout history, and as the human forces moved into position, there was a shared sense of determination, a belief that, no matter the odds, humanity would prevail. The final stand. The human forces gathered at the outskirts of the Kuk Kamsu's central command center, the heart of their empire on Sultan. The command center was a colossal structure, built into the side of a mountain, with layers of reinforced walls, defense turrets, and shielded gates. It was the last bastion of Kuk Kamsu power, and they were determined to defend it to the bitter end. Admiral Hayes, observing the battlefield from the bridge of the HFY Resolute, knew that this would be the most challenging fight yet. The Kuk Kamsu had nowhere left to run, and they would fight with the ferocity of a cornered beast. "All units, prepare for the assault," Hayes commanded. "This is it, the final push. We take this command center, and the war is over." The ground forces, led by Commander Cole, were the first to advance. Tanks and armored vehicles rolled forward, supported by infantry and air cover. The Kuk Kamsu defenders opened fire with everything they had, turning the battlefield into a hellscape of explosions and laser fire. The sky was filled with the screech of anti-aircraft fire and the roar of human gunships strafing enemy positions. "Keep moving. We can't let them pin us down," Cole shouted as his team pushed forward, using the terrain for cover as they advanced toward the command center's outer walls. The battle was intense, with both sides sustaining heavy casualties. The Kuk Kamsu had deployed their elite warriors, massive reptilian soldiers clad in heavy armor and wielding devastating energy weapons. These warriors were a fearsome sight, towering over the human soldiers and shrugging off small arms fire with ease. But the humans fought with a determination that matched the Kuk Kamsu's savagery. They used their superior tactics and ingenuity to outmaneuver the larger, slower enemy. Snipers picked off Kuk Kamsu commanders, while engineers set up traps and explosives to take out their heavy armor. As the ground forces fought their way closer to the command center, Admiral Hayes coordinated the space battle above. The Kuk Kamsu fleet, though battered and outnumbered, was making a desperate last stand to protect their homeworld. "Concentrate fire on their flagship," Hayes ordered. "If we take it out, the rest of their fleet will crumble." The UHS Resolute and its sister ships unleashed a withering barrage of torpedoes and energy blasts at the Kuk Kamsu flagship, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons. The Kuk Kamsu ship returned fire, its beams slicing through space and hammering the human vessels. But the humans had the upper hand in firepower and coordination, and their relentless assault began to take its toll on the enemy's ship. "Admiral, their shields are failing," Captain Reynolds reported. "Finish them off," Hayes said grimly. With a final devastating salvo, the human fleet breached the dreadnought's hull, causing it to explode in a blinding flash of light. The destruction of the flagship sent shockwaves through the Kuk-Kamsu fleet, and their remaining ships began to retreat in disarray. All ships, continue the assault on the planet's surface, Hayes ordered. The ground forces need our support. On the ground, Commander Cole and his team had reached the outer walls of the command center. The massive gates were sealed shut, and the Kuk-Kamsu were pouring fire down from the walls above. The humans took cover, but they were pinned down and unable to advance further. "Vargas, we need those gates open," Cole yelled into his comms. Dr. Vargas, who had been coordinating the engineers, replied, "We're working on it. Just give us a few more minutes." The engineers set to work, planting charges at the base of the gate and hacking into the command center's security systems. The Kuk-Kamsu defenders, realizing what was happening, concentrated their fire on the engineers, trying to stop them from breaching the gates. "Cover them," Cole ordered, directing his soldiers to lay down suppressing fire. The engineers worked frantically under constant fire, but their efforts paid off. With a deafening explosion, the charges detonated, blowing the gates wide open. "Go, go, go," Cole shouted, leading the charge into the breach. The human soldiers stormed through the shattered gates, engaging the Kuk-Kamsu defenders in brutal close-quarters combat. The command center's interior was a labyrinth of corridors and chambers, all heavily fortified and defended. The fighting was fierce, with every inch of ground contested. As they advanced deeper into the command center, the humans faced increasingly desperate resistance. The Kuk-Kamsu were fighting for their very survival, and their determination was evident in every encounter. But the humans pressed on, driven by the knowledge that victory was within their grasp. Finally, Cole and his team reached the command center's central chamber, where the Kuk-Kamsu High Command was holed up. The chamber was a vast, circular room filled with control consoles, holo-displays, and tactical maps. In the center stood the Kuk-Kamsu warlord, a towering figure clad in ornate battle armor, surrounded by his elite guards. "That's him," Cole said, recognizing the warlord from intelligence briefings. "Take him out, and this is over." The final battle was a brutal, chaotic melee. The Kuk-Kamsu warlord fought with the strength and ferocity of a beast, his energy sword cutting through human soldiers with terrifying speed. But the humans fought with equal ferocity, using their numbers and coordination to overwhelm the enemy. In the end, it was a well-placed shot from a human sniper that brought the warlord down. The Kuk-Kamsu leader staggered, his armor sparking as the energy coursing through it short-circuited. With a final, defiant roar, he fell to the ground, defeated. The death of the warlord broke the Kuk-Kamsu's will to fight. The remaining defenders, seeing their leader fall, surrendered or fled, leaving the command center in human hands. Admiral Hayes received the news of the victory with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. The battle had been won, but at a great cost. Thousands of human lives had been lost in the fight to reach this point, and the toll of the war was heavy. "Admiral, the Kuk-Kamsu High Command has surrendered," Captain Reynolds reported. "The war is over." Hayes nodded slowly, taking in the magnitude of the moment. "Order all ships to stand down," he said. "Prepare to receive the surrender." The war that had ravaged the galaxy for so long was finally over. The Kuk-Kamsu Empire, once a dominant power, was now in ruins. Humanity had emerged victorious, but the price had been steep. The galaxy was forever changed, and the scars of the conflict would linger for generations. As the human forces secured the command center and began the process of negotiating the terms of surrender, Hayes reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity had been tested in ways they had never imagined, and they had proven their strength, resilience, and determination. But there was still much work to be done: the rebuilding of shattered worlds, the healing of deep wounds, and the forging of a new future in a galaxy where humanity was now a major power. "Admiral, incoming transmission from Earth," Captain Reynolds said, interrupting Hayes' thoughts. Put it through, Hayes replied. The holo display flickered to life, revealing the face of the President of the United Human Federation. The President's expression was a mixture of pride and solemnity. Admiral Hayes, on behalf of all humanity, I want to thank you and your brave soldiers for your service. You've secured a future for our people, and your names will be remembered for generations to come. Thank you, Madam President, Hayes said. But this victory belongs to everyone who fought and sacrificed for our survival. We may have won the war, but we must also win the peace. The President nodded. Indeed, the galaxy will never be the same, and it's up to us to ensure that the future we build is one of peace and prosperity. But for now, let us honor those who gave their lives for this victory. Hayes stood silent for a moment, thinking of all the lives lost in the war. The price of victory had been high, but it had secured humanity's place in the galaxy. As the transmission ended, Hayes turned to look out the viewport at the planet below. Sultan, the Kuk-Kamsa homeworld, lay in ruins, but it was now a symbol of humanity's indomitable spirit. The war was over, but the story of humanity's rise had only just begun. A new dawn. The galaxy was in a state of uneasy peace. The war had ended, but its echoes still reverberated across countless star systems. Worlds lay in ruins, economies were shattered, and entire species were left grappling with the trauma of a conflict that had pushed the boundaries of endurance. For humanity, the victory against the Kuk-Kamsu had come at a significant cost, both in lives and in the resources expended to secure their survival. The challenge now was to rebuild and reshape a galaxy that had been forever altered by the war. Admiral Hayes, now hailed as a hero across human worlds, found little time for rest. His responsibilities had shifted from leading fleets into battle to overseeing the delicate process of post-war reconstruction. The United Human Federation had established a provisional government on Sultan to oversee the transition of power from the Kuk-Kamsu to a new, more inclusive galactic order. In the heart of Sultan's capital city, which was still scarred from the final battle, a grand ceremony was taking place. Representatives from every species that had fought alongside humanity were gathered to witness the signing of the Galactic Concord, a new alliance formed to ensure peace and cooperation among the galaxy's civilizations. The massive hall, once a Kuk-Kamsu war chamber, had been transformed into a symbol of unity. Banners of every species present hung from the walls, and the air was filled with the sounds of languages and cultures intermingling, a stark contrast to the hostility that had defined the past years. Admiral Hayes stood at the center of the hall, flanked by human diplomats and military leaders. The leaders of the allied species, each a representative of their people, stood beside him. Together, they faced the future with a shared resolve. The Kuk-Kamsu, now leaderless and broken, had been forced to accept the terms of the Galactic Concord. Their empire had been dismantled, their worlds occupied, and their military capabilities severely restricted. But they were also granted a chance at redemption, a chance to rebuild under the watchful eye of the new alliance. President Thompson of the United Human Federation stepped forward to address the assembly. Her voice carried the weight of history as she spoke. Today, we stand on the threshold of a new era, an era where the horrors of war are behind us and the promise of peace lies ahead. The Galactic Concord represents not just a victory over tyranny, but a commitment to the values that define us all: freedom, cooperation, and the pursuit of knowledge. She paused, looking around the hall, her gaze meeting the eyes of the leaders present. The journey to this moment has been long and arduous. We have lost much, and we have endured great suffering. But through it all, we have shown that when we stand together, there is no challenge we cannot overcome. The room erupted in applause, a sound that echoed through the chamber and out into the streets, where crowds of citizens, both human and alien, had gathered to witness the momentous occasion. Admiral Hayes, watching the scene unfold, couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The war had tested humanity to its limits, but it had also brought out the best in them. The creativity, resilience, and determination that had been the hallmark of their species had carried them through the darkest times. As the leaders prepared to sign the Galactic Concord, a holographic display lit up, showing the treaty's terms and conditions. Each leader took turns placing their seal on the document, their signatures forever binding their people to the new order. When it was Hayes' turn, he stepped forward, his heart heavy with the memories of those who had fallen. As he placed his hand on the holographic interface, his signature appeared beside those of the other leaders, symbolizing humanity's commitment to the Alliance. The signing of the Galactic Concord was met with thunderous applause. The war was over, but the real work of building a lasting peace had just begun. The aftermath of the war saw a flurry of activity across the galaxy. Human engineers and scientists, working alongside their allies, began the monumental task of rebuilding worlds devastated by the conflict. Infrastructure was restored, economies were revitalized, and the scars of war slowly began to heal. On Earth, celebrations erupted as news of the Galactic Concord spread. Humanity had not only survived its greatest challenge, but had emerged stronger and more united than ever before. The victory had solidified their place as a major power in the galaxy, but it also came with new responsibilities. The United Human Federation, now a central player in galactic affairs, found itself at the forefront of diplomatic efforts to maintain peace and stability. Earth, once considered a backwater planet by many alien species, was now a beacon of hope and a symbol of what could be achieved through unity and cooperation.